I'll be answering questions that subscribers have asked about the driving lessons, driving tests, and anything on their mind about driving. Let's get answering them questions. So the first question is from Little B, and it's about how many hours you're having. And the question they put is, imagine having 60 plus hours of driving lessons and your instructor saying to you, you're not ready for your driving test. How do you maintain the confidence? Well, unfortunately, there are a few people who don't maintain that standard and they drop off. But the best thing I can say to you and anyone who's watching this would be, not everyone gets to the driving standard by 40 hours. Some do, like I say, 60, 70, some are in the hundreds of hours, unfortunately, and some do less than 40 hours. So the only thing I'd say is that as long as you feel like you're making progress, and what you've got to remember is if you're a slow learner and you're taking a long time to get to the standard of the driving test, then just go for small goals. Every time you get in the car, just give yourself one goal to do that lesson. So if it's you're always being told to check your right shoulder, or you're always being told about holding the clutch still when you're moving off, then focus on that one thing to do, so you feel like you're making progress, and that'll give you the confidence to feel like you're making the progress, and you'll eventually get there. Okay? Good luck on your lessons, and I'm hoping this gives you an idea. So this one's from Ballum, and it's about me really, and they're asking how am I enjoying the job with the pandemic being around, and I've had my vaccines. Well, I've had both vaccines. I finished my second vaccine about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so I'm fully vaccinated. And the job, yeah, I've had a lot of time off. Unfortunately, a lot of instructors have gone by the wayside, and that's unfortunate for them. I feel sorry for them. And I'm working, not as many hours as I want to work, because I'm restricting the amount of people I take on at the moment, just to kind of keep things safe as I can. But I do enjoy the job. I enjoy teaching people. I enjoy seeing them progress, and it makes my day when I say, right, well done, you're on your way now, enjoy your driving, enjoy your life. So yeah, I do enjoy the job. This one's from Lauren Walker, and she wants to know tips on how to use a sat-nav on multi-lane roundabouts, I suppose big lane roundabouts. Now the biggest tip I will give you is learn how to do multi-lane roundabouts first before you start using the sat-nav, because the sat-nav's not going to tell you what lane to go into. Because if you enter a roundabout with 3 lanes and say you're taking the 5th exit, all it's going to say to you is 5th exit on the roundabout, or as you're going halfway around, it'll start saying to you something like next exit, and it might be saying this in advance because it's anticipating the speed you're going based off your positioning on the GPS. So it might be saying it's on the 3rd exit, so you need to be aware of your exits. So what I would say is learn the sat-nav on how to use the sat-nav, when to look at the sat-nav, when to look at it in advance, and what it's asking you to do in advance. So practice that before you start doing big roundabouts. That's my biggest tip I'd tell to people. And when you come to do big roundabouts, practice them without a sat-nav first. Get used to how to change lanes on them rather than relying on the sat-nav to say when to come across. Okay? I hope it answers it. If it does, fantastic. So Fried Chicken's asked this question: is it a huge deal messing up with the manoeuvre on the driving test? Well, it is, because if you get serious, then you're going to fail the test, simple as that, because you've got to pass the manoeuvre to pass the driving test, as well as the driving. And the manoeuvre is only a few minutes of the driving test. But if you mess it up, right, and this is what you're going to remember, is on the manoeuvre, they're going to mark you for observations and controls. So the observations is looking over your shoulders, looking round, make sure it's safe, and looking where the car's going, making sure that you're not going to hit things. And obviously the control is controlling the car so it's safe. So as long as you do that, even if you make a mistake on the manoeuvre and you correct it, then you'll be fine. So as long as you're kind of correcting the fault, so if you mess it up and you go forward and correct it, then you're going to be okay. So this one's from Samuel, and he wants to know, should the government and the DVSA have done more to make test dates available? Because in their area where he's taking his driving test, he's saying there's nothing available this year. It's a tricky one. I mean, obviously, because COVID's kind of messed everything up for all the driving tests around the UK. They are trying to rectify that, but I suppose the early start of the pandemic, it's basically everything went into lockdown. How could they have planned it better? Personally, I would have thought what they're doing now should have been done 6 months ago, which at the moment they're putting on more tests and taking on more exams where they should have been more proactive, and I feel that they're reacting to it a bit late now. So that's my own opinion, but I suppose other opinions on it, other instructors might say other things, but that's my opinion. They should have done it a lot earlier, and we might have not been as bad as we are now. So Caitlin Cadell's asked, what's the best way to overcome driving test nerves? I've done quite a few videos in the past. What I do say to people is know how to drive. I know it sounds silly, but know how to drive so you feel confident with your driving, you feel happy with your driving standard. Know the driving test manoeuvres, because them two are quite important, and if you can't do that, you're going to feel nervous straight away before you even get in the car for your driving test. And prepare for the driving test itself. Have some mock driving tests. Drive near the test centre, within a mile of the test centre. Get used to some of the roads around there, because the first 5 minutes is when people make mistakes because of the nerves. And if you're going to take any kind of rescue remedy, then take these things in advance a week or two before to get used to them, see if they affect you, because some people might not like them. And the final one is obviously get a good night's sleep. And think of it like the test as your examiner sat next to you as a driving lesson, rather than think of it as a big issue. So just go in there and just prepare for it like it's a driving lesson. So Oliver Howard's asked, how many lessons does it take to pass the driving test? It's like, how long's a piece of string? On average, the DVSA is saying 47 hours plus 25 hours private tuition. That's what they're saying as average. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to do that. What it basically means that you might take less than that. It depends on your learning style, how quickly you learn. It depends on how slow you learn. Some people can take 80, 90 hours more. Some people can do it in 25, 30 hours. So I would say about an average, about 45 hours, 40 hours is probably about right. This one's further around, and they want to know how they can cope with going at higher speeds, because driving at faster roads does make them get a bit panicky. So I suppose going on the motorway is scaring them at the same time. So best thing to do is get comfortable with going 30, 40 mile an hour, right? Just feel that you can get to an appropriate speed for that speed limit. And if you're on a 50 mile an hour speed limit, don't feel like you've got to get to 50 mile an hour. If you're struggling because it's going to panic you, get to 45 mile an hour and get used to doing 45 mile an hour. And then over the next few months, you'll gradually get to about 48. That's what you're going to say, just a little bit faster, but not super fast. And over the next few months, again, start to do, if you're on a 60 mile an hour road and that's speed limit, just go over 50 a little bit, but not lots, and just go to 55 if you feel comfortable. And it just takes a bit of time. That's what it does. It takes a bit of time. So Gavin asked a question, the 3-point turn was dropped out of the driving test and replaced with the park on the right. When I'm not teaching people to drive, which manoeuvre do I use most out of them two? Possibly the 3-point turn, because the park on the right, I don't tend to park on the right unless I have to for a main reason, but I try to avoid it because it's easy to do a 3-point turn. So Andrea has asked the question, taking the wrong turn on the driving test, is it a fail? So they're asking you to turn right and you go ahead. Well, it's not a fail if you've not indicated or you've not positioned yourself to turn right. So I'll give you an example. If they say to you, take the next right turn, and you go mirror signal right, position yourself and just go straight past it, then it could possibly be a series, because if someone reacts to the fact that you're in a position to turn right and tries to go past you on the left, then you're going to get a series. But if they ask you to turn right and you don't do anything, just carry on going past it, then you're not going to get a fault for it because you've done nothing wrong at that point. You've just gone the wrong way. So Jibin Matthews has asked this question, that the waiting time for the driving test is 4 months plus. Is there anything that driving instructors can do to help reduce this? They can manage the students and maybe give them less hours per week. So instead of having double a lesson, they can have one lesson. That's one way most instructors will probably cope with it. Or they might say, well, let's just kind of put you on hold for a month or until you get a bit close, and then continue with your driving lessons then leading up to your driving test. Or what other instructors will probably do is say, well, let's carry on with driving lessons. As we get closer to the point where you're getting better, we'll look to see the situation with the driving test, or we'll try and get a cancellation service to book you an earlier test. That's another option. And any driving instructors who've got any ideas will just email the DVSA anyway and say this is what we should be doing, and putting pressure on the DVSA. At the moment, the DVSA are taking on more examiners and showing more tests to try and reduce this situation. So I hope that helps you. So Nancy Ramsey asked me the question, what do I prefer, manual or automatic cars? I drive a manual car 9 times out of 10 every time. I enjoy driving a manual car. I think they're fun to drive. My wife's got an automatic car and I enjoy driving that too. So a bit of both, but I enjoy teaching the manual ones. So Fairy Talivayola has asked a question about she's worried about going past parked car. She's too close. She's worried about the distance, as well as quite a lot of little things. A lot of the things you've mentioned tend to crop up in the first 10-15 hours of lessons, and what I tend to say to people is try not to worry about everything, just slow things down, just concentrate on one thing at a time. So if you've got like a problem with going past parked cars, then make this your goal for your driving lesson. Right, I'm going to work on this. So go to a quiet road and just stop next to a parked car, provided there's nothing behind you, and just look the distance you are, and as you go past it, just look at the distance, the gaps between you. It should be 1 metre or a door's width. And like I say, just practice one goal at a time rather than 5 or 6 things, because it sounds like there's lots of little things going on that are wrong, and maybe instructors pushing you too hard, and really should be taking a backward step and just concentrate on one thing at a time. Dennis Salway says, have I ever been genuinely scared in a driving lesson with a new student? Not scared, but concerned that they're actually driving dangerously, so I have to use the brakes a lot and pull them over. And that's why when I get a new student, I always take them somewhere quiet first, even if they say to me, I've had loads of lessons, because experience tells me that they might have had loads of lessons, but I don't know what they're like, so I'm going to take them somewhere quiet first. And that's usually the right thing to do, because the amount of times I've done that and the person's been atrocious, they're not even looking, they're mounting the curb nearly, I'm having to grab the wheel, use the brakes, tell them what to do, look over the shoulders. So yeah, there's been times when it's been a little bit scary, but I've got dual control to help sort things out as well. Saeed has asked the question, how can I improve my awareness of the surroundings around me? Well, what I would do is, when you come onto a new road, just pull over, with your instructor, and just get your instructor to say to you, right, what's ahead of us? What are you looking at? Because it could be that you've got, not intentionally, but blinkers on, so you're just seeing what's there, and being aware of what's in front of you and then looking at the side of you, it does help. And little things like that, little tasks, or even sit in the passenger seat if they're driving, and get them to say what they can see, and then you can say, oh yeah, or even get them to ask you, what can you see on the road, and if in the mist, they'll fill in. So that'll help you to be aware of what you should be looking for. Darren Tallons asked the question, can an examiner give you a direction that's dangerous or any information that's going to confuse you on the driving test? Well, they're not there to trick you, I know that. They're there to assess you, and if they do make a mistake, which does happen rarely, I mean, I've sat in loads of tests and I've only ever seen one examiner make a mistake and they didn't know the area, and they apologised and corrected it, and they didn't mark them down for that mistake, because at the end of the day, it's the examiner's fault. But they're not going to ask you to go down the wrong way of a one-way street deliberately to trick you. They're there to assess you, to see if you're driving safely. So don't worry about that, and just enjoy the driving, and good luck on the driving test. So Elise has asked the question. She's had 7 hours of driving lessons, and she's had 2 instructors in that time, and maybe she just couldn't get hold of an instructor. I don't know the reason for that, but she's got a test booked for October, and she's got a partner's car once a week, a little bit nervous, and she's a bit scared, and she stalls. Now the nervous and stalling is quite normal for the level you're at. October is far away, but you really want to think about upping up your lessons. So if you're having once a week with your partner, try and do it twice a week with your partner, or 3 times a week in the evenings when it's quieter. And the stalling is usually caused by a lack of experience with the pedals and lack of knowledge. try and get yourself sorted out of an instructor. I know you put on there that finding instructors is quite difficult at the moment, but keep trying. Can you go on the waiting list in the meantime? And I say, while you're waiting to get on the waiting list, get yourself more lessons with your partner, because the more you can drive, the better you're going to be when you come to have lessons. So Sam's asked the question, can I, or I suppose any other instructor, show updated test routes for that area? Now, they've not done updated test routes in the UK now for about 5 or 6 years. They stopped publishing them. So the only time you get a test route is if you sit in the back of a car. So I've not sat in the back of a car of a test now for over 2 years because of the pandemic. So I don't know the test route, and I certainly don't publish test routes, because I feel that publishing test routes kind of defeats the object of driving your driving test. I will do mock tests occasionally, and I'll do a route that I think's suitable, that's going to help the student to achieve a good varied driving. So unfortunately, test routes, they don't publish them. So Grant's asked the question, my thoughts on bribes on the driving test. Now, I think if you try and bribe an examiner, then you shouldn't be taking your test, because obviously you're not good enough. And if you're not good enough, then don't take the test. You shouldn't be on the road. If an examiner takes a bribe, then they should be sent to jail. Simple as that. And it has happened in the past, not often, just rarely. I think I only know one occasion where I read in an article, a driving article, of an examiner that got prosecuted from the DVSA, and the government got sent to jail. And I'm not sure how long they got sent to jail for, but they got sent to jail. So there's a deterrent there, so examiners don't even go down that side. And to be honest, examiners are, they're quite happy to kind of pass you if you're good enough, but if you're not good enough, they'll fail you. No, why should they offer you a bribe? They get good money. Mr. Mark UK has put this one, is there any tips on becoming a driving instructor? Well, obviously be a calm person. That's my first tip. If you're already stressed out, then you're going to get even more stressed when you're teaching people how to drive. So be calm, be considerate, know the rules of the road, and obviously when you're doing your training, it's going to take a while. With your training, it's going to take 18 months minimum. And there's 3 parts. You've got the theory, your driving test, and then you've got the ability to teach test. And the pass rate for the final one's quite low. So if you can learn while you're working on another job, that's even better, because you can combine them both then. So S has asked this question, if you're driving on your driving test and you're, say, on a 30-mile-an-hour road and you're doing a reasonable speed, say you're doing 28, 29 mile an hour, and someone comes behind you, pressurising you and overtakes you, or even bibs you on at you, would you fail your driving test? The answer is no, because you've done nothing wrong. I mean, what usually happens, and I've seen this happen quite a few times, is you'll be on your driving test and you'll be doing a reasonable speed and someone overtakes you and shoots past you, and the examiner usually puts a comment to try and reassure you. They're a bit silly, them drivers, going a bit fast, like that, aren't they? Or something along them lines, to kind of make you realise that you're doing the right thing and ignore them. So you're not going to get serious if you're doing a reasonable speed.